So the theme of this conference is the future of Rwanda, with or without the current president, Paul Kagame. He's now serving his second time. In 2017, there will be new elections. According to the constitution, he cannot serve for a third term. So the question is, what will the regime do? Will they try to change the constitution? Will Kagame appoint a follow-up, or will something completely different happen? A lot of questions. Luckily, we have 5 excellent speakers who will try to give some answers. There's room for questions after all the speakers have said something, because otherwise there won't be any room for the last speaker. So, Olivier is a journalist. He is also a lecturer at the University of Rotterdam, and like the others, he can introduce himself better than I can.
Okay, my name is Olivier Nyibugara. Among other things, I am a journalist, but I'm here rather in my capacity as a lecturer in new media and online journalism at the University of Rotterdam. I've just published a book about Rwanda, which I entitled Complexities and Dangers of Remembering and Forgetting in Rwanda. That's volume 1 of the series I call Memory Traps. And in Rwanda, if it happens that I translate it into Rwanda, I will title it which means that we have the past, which is not there to help us, but actually to make our lives difficult. So traps should be taken both as a verb, but also as a noun. Memory traps us, and then memory traps, because there are more than just one memory trap. But to come back to our discussion here, I was asked, like other speakers, to come and reflect upon the future of Rwanda without or with Kagame. Contrary to what Alphonse just said, I think we got 2 different understandings of the topic. My understanding was that I was supposed to reflect, to give my thoughts about what the future of Rwanda would look like without Kagame. I don't think I'm expected to write a report, put a stamp on it, and say, Rwanda, look, this is what you have to do. So I place my criticism, or let's say, place my thoughts in that framework rather than in the kind of patronizing way, which is far from my thoughts. The title of my presentation is this. We're talking about the future of our country. But my question is, whose country are we talking about? Whose past or whose future are we talking about? Because I'm someone who's interested in the past, and someone who believes that the past or the future stems from the past, I would say, whose past are we talking about? Alphonse rightly said that we have, when we talk about Rwanda, depending on who's talking, we have the impression that we have 2 Rwandas. I do agree with him, but I would go further and say, which 2 Rwandas are we talking about? There is a Rwanda which seems to be comfortable for the Hutus, and Rwanda which seems to be comfortable for the Tutsis. And that seems to be my starting point. The question for this, or today's discussion is, Rwanda, is there a future without Paul Kagame? Personally, I didn't criticize this question, but I could have asked it differently if I had had time to question Annika and organizers. I would have rather said, the question is, Paul Kagame, is there a future for him in Rwanda? Because we're talking about him and his lot after 2017. He can't tell us what he intends to do. We are just in confusion. At some point, he seems to be very clear that he has always said he will step down. But what kills me is there's a big but that keeps coming back. There should be no but. There's a constitution that says 2 terms, then you're gone. But it comes back with the song I've heard from Bongo, Omar Bongo, the song I've heard from Paul Biya, the song I've heard from other presidents of Africa. But if the people of this country ask me to stay, I will stay. Then I say, what do we make of the law? Finally, if the law is that to be respected. So the question would be, is there a future for him or for Kagame in Rwanda? And if yes, which one? I think that would be a very interesting question. As I've just said, we have a history that prevents us from looking into the future. Let me take you through the political history timeline of Rwanda. Back in 1897, we had the Ruchunchu coup d'etat. For those of us who remember, well, we were not yet born, but for those of us who have heard about it, the coup d'etat of Ruchunchu was between King Mibambo IV Rutarinwa and his brother Yuhi IV or the fifth Musinga. That's a major event. I think everyone agrees with me that a brother kills another brother to take the throne. 30 years later, that's around 1831, the same Yuhi Musinga was removed by the Belgians, and coincidentally, that's the year when the Belgians introduced the ID card to put a stamp on everybody's front that you are Hutu, this, you deserve this status, you are Tutsi, you deserve this. You will agree with me that removing Musinga together with the ID card is another major event in our history, and the replacing with his son, who was more, let's say, who was ready to lend a more docile ear to the Belgians and the church. 30 years later, that's the terrible period of our history, 59-62. That's when we have the end of the Tutsi monarchy and the coming to power of the Hutus. I hope everyone agrees with me that this is another big, major event. Whatever stamp we put on it, this is a major event in our political history. 30 years later, that's the period between 1990 and 1994, we had the end of what I call the Hutu republics and the coming of the Tutsi republic to power. Of course, you will understand that when I say the Hutu republics, it doesn't mean that no Tutsi live in Rwanda at the time. And when I say the Tutsi republic, it doesn't mean that there's no Hutu living in Rwanda. But when I say that, it means the two Hutu republics somehow reduced the Tutsis to a second-class citizen status, which is exactly the reverse, at least from a point of view, from 1994 to today. We've seen that this cycle of 30 years, 4 times for over a century. 2017 is something like 30 years, about 30 years from 1990. Aren't we in our right, our legitimate right, to ask if any major event, wherever it would come from, is going to happen in our country? It might be President Kagame deciding that the people have asked him to stay. It might be that somebody else with another vision of Rwanda comes in. But I do personally expect a major change unless history and the regularity it has given us changes. In the book, I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I played the role of a pessimist. Not that I don't believe my country is heading towards a great future, but because I see so many elements, the past, the culture, the way we refuse to accept certain realities. And when I say we, I don't refer to anyone, I say we Rwandans. There are a number of things that we don't accept. I will come back to them at the end. So it's a kind of pessimist or pessimistic book. Whoever reads it, you will have to take into account that it's a pessimistic, otherwise there will be no danger in the title. Actually, there's danger in the title because remembering and forgetting in Rwanda has become a crime, something that can cost lives. There are a number of points I discussed in that book. The first is that the leaders impose a past corresponding to their own ethnic identity. This was true under Kayibanda, this was true under Berimana, and this is definitely true under President Kagame. Take one textbook from primary school, because we are told there's no history being taught in Rwanda. But I managed to find one book from primary school, I think 4th year, and it's titled Primary School or Primary Social Studies. And therein, they define the concept of ubuhake. This is one of the most interesting topics when you ask Rwandans to define what ubuhake was. I don't just give the definition, but I give the two sides of the story. On the one hand, this was the ideal situation where the poor people managed to get a job by the rich neighbors and could get, instead of a salary, but they could get a cow or whatever. On the other hand, this is a system where a certain category of people were enslaved by others by working for free, and if they were lucky, at the end they would get a cow, which, if they make a very long step, would give back. This is the primary school textbook, ubuhake. Sometimes a farmer will look after cattle belonging to someone else. In return, that person will give that farmer a cow. Nice system, right? People who did not own cattle could work for someone who was rich, and in return could be given a number of favors, including a cow or a plot of land or farm. I would say this is not an acceptable way of presenting such a controversial topic. Either you leave it out, or you tell the two sides of the story. You can't present ubuhake for a number of people when you know that for a number of people it represents one of the worst, the most horrible systems in their history. The second point I'm discussing in my book is that memories related to ethnic groups have dominated the narratives that were taught, whether under Kayibanda or under Habyarimana or under Kagame. Actually, I tried to compare the three leaders of Rwanda, and I found so many things that were common than those that were different. You know, shall I give you a few of them? Just calculate when they were born and when they came to power. They were all 37 years. I don't know how this happened. They all somehow had the same vision of democracy. None of them had this idea, at least from what they said and what they practiced, to have an open public sphere where democracy could have or could grow. Another point I discuss in the book is that the leaders, the three leaders, including Kagame, impose amnesia. Let me read one quote from his speech on 7th of April 2007. It was in Kinyarwanda, and this translation is mine. They keep saying that the RPF too killed people. Who did they kill? Millions of people crossed the border, meaning into the Congo and Tanzania and Burundi, after massacring the Tutsis. Who was killed by the RPF? The RPF does praiseworthy things only. For some Rwandans, I would say many, this could be shocking because this is not true. Shall we call the Kibeho massacre the only one that was filmed so far a praiseworthy things? By saying that RPF does nothing else but praiseworthy things, this means that you should forget that Kibeho happened. You should forget that Byumba, Ruhengeri, and other places never happened. You should remember something else and essentially forget this, which I think is another trap. We can't have any future when we can't have a past that accommodates these types of memories. Let me say this before I get criticized. If I'm saying this, it doesn't mean that I'm denying that something else, the genocide that was committed against Tutsis happened. I'm saying that it's not the only thing that happened in Rwanda. It's not that RPF does praiseworthy things. And this is connected to the future of Kagame from a point of view, of course. Why? Because whenever he leaves, whenever he becomes a simple citizen, these memories will come back and will haunt his future, for sure. Whether he put in place a law that prevents the judicial system to prosecute a president, a former president, these memories will absolutely come back. So there's no future without these things coming back. And I don't see any problem why actually they're being repressed. Now, the title of my presentation was Who's Past?
Olivier,
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Great. Let me use the 2 minutes to talk about something I find really important. There is this wrong idea, actually we got it wrong, that there's something called a new Rwanda, which is moving towards a bright future. And that good Rwanda, as Alfonso just said, is where Rwandanness is being promoted rather than Hutuness or Tutsiness or Twaness. I was surprised 3-4 days ago when I was listening to a press conference given by Paul Kagame in January 2011, and in which he defined actually his vision of New Rwanda. I don't know whether I can go, no. If I can play it very quickly.
30 seconds?
30 seconds. I think I will play the short version of it.
Let me repeat this. If you want to call yourself a Hutu, if you want to call yourself a Mututsi, if you want to call yourself a Mutwa, there is nothing that stops you doing that. That I know. There is no law, there is nothing. But what is in place is to use what you are to the detriment of the other who is different from you. This is the distinction, please. Why don't you understand that for all these years we've been? We are not going to have an identity card like we used to have many years ago.
Okay, I think I got my point here. He's saying there's nothing in Rwanda that prevents people to call themselves Hutus and Tutsis and Twas. And actually in the previous part of this quote, he says, these are the 3 sections of our population. And I hate the term section because it suggests that there are gaps between the sections. Section means something is cut. And those sections are called Hutu and Tutsi. And nothing prevents us from being Hutus and from calling ourselves Hutus and Tutsis. What he changed, and that's the part of his speech, is that there is no official stamp, the one that was introduced by the Belgians, on the front, showing everyone that you are Hutu, or you are a Tutsi, or you are Twa, but you are a Twa, and you are Hutu. And if those people exist, it means they have some features. I'm not talking about physical features, but there's something that tells you that you are Hutu or a Tutsi. But my favorite quote, I think it's a mistake on his part, if you want to call it a mistake, a language mistake, it's a language mistake, but I think perhaps it betrays what he believes in. The quote is, you've just heard it, I'm going to repeat it. But what is in place is to use what you are to the detriment of others who are different from you. I think he meant, but what is in place is to prevent, and the prevent is missing. And I think this can be turned against him. Let me end with something very quick. One artist in Rwanda called Cyprien Gamba, who was killed, I think in April or May 1994, sang that this world was sick. I think he meant Rwanda was sick. And I think I do agree with him. And our sickness is in our culture, in our belief. Those of Rwandans who are here, please, can you tell me what the word criticism means in Rwanda? Criticism, critique. Is it positive or negative? If unenze. So criticism is negative. Why criticism should be positive? When I was doing literature, they told me a criticized author is the best author. If you have a chance to be criticized, it means your next book, your next publication is better. But in Rwanda, criticism is negative. Why should it be negative? My last book is there. Please criticize my book so that volume 2 can be great. Why should criticism be? So our culture, psychologists, language psychologists say, and I think Kagame Alexei was one of them, if you have no concept in your language, it means that concept doesn't exist. In Rwanda, we don't have the concept criticism, and that's a sickness. I think we should create it. Second, Who can tell me the concept opposition? I'm not talking about political position.
I really have to be.
Okay, let me answer my question then. Opposition in Kinyarwanda translated abatavuga rumwe. If you are in opposition to what I'm saying, abatavuga rumwe. We don't speak the same language. In Kinyarwanda, when you don't speak the same language, you are a foreigner. And in Kinyarwanda, you will agree with me, I hope. We tell our kids, hey, so the foreigners in our culture are dangerous people. Foreigners, enemies, these are close concepts. So opposition is being a foreigner and being an enemy. So we should create those concepts in our belief, in our language. And I'm not necessarily targeting the RPF regime, because this applied as well to the previous ones. Thanks for your attention.
We are dangerous foreigners. For our funds, we are patronizing. Very happy to organize this debate for Rwanda, but my colleague has a question also.
May I pose one question? When you were talking about the memories, was that a political statement or a psychological statement?
Which one?
You were talking about the memories of the past. Was this a political story or a psychological story?
Memory becomes psychological when it applies to individuals, but when it applies to a people or to a group, then it's much more cultural, because there are other elements that enters into. So there is, of course, cultural is political as well, because the culture takes into account who is in power and which power relations are prevailing in the. And from that perspective, for instance, a Hutu whose brother was killed in the Byumba Stadium has to forget that one. That's culturally embedded and politically embedded. Why? Because that was a praiseworthy thing. That at least the official discourse tells him to believe. So it's psychological because it applies to this, to the psychological part of the individual, but it's also collective, cultural, and political as well.
Thank you.